Very crucial step. That, and that. Okay. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Dive Bomb Industries. I'm Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver.
It is not too early. Start getting your wheels turning, what you're going to need spread-wise, and go over to the guys' Dive Bomb Industries and get what you're going to need. Season's going to be here before we know it. I don't know if you know it or not. We're only 6 months away. It's March right now. But the best season of all seasons is right around the corner, and that is turkey season. What says you, Mr. Kelley Powers?
Oh, you know what? I was actually running a turkey call 5 minutes ago before I got back in the truck to do this podcast. So, yes, absolutely. It's one of my favorite times of the year.
I don't know what it is. I think it's because, we're in Texas and the weather, you get a couple seasons and it's going to be, but the weather's always really nice when the wind's not blowing, and I love being out there. I love waterfowl hunting. I love shooting ducks and geese, but there's something about turkey season. It's different.
No doubt. It's you get trees and things start blooming, things start coming to life, and there's nothing like a turkey woods. And I just, one of my favorite times of the year. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things to do. If you were to ask my son, and he's 12, and goodness, he duck hunts with me every day. Every day he's out of school, and he does not miss a day. But turkey hunting is his passion. Like he would rather turkey hunt than anything.
And I think it's because I'm okay with losing. Like, there's this notion that every time you go out, like you gotta kill a turkey and everything. Like, I am totally fine if I can hear a couple gobbles and kind of play that game, that chess match a little bit. My day has been made. Whether or not of course I want to pull the trigger and I want to trick him, but like if I can just kind of play that chess match a little bit, I'm happy with it. So maybe it's just the bar is a little bit lower for me. I don't know. It's my time to relax too.
See, I don't get it.
Yeah, I grew up in a part of Tennessee where we didn't have a lot of turkeys back in the 80s, and actually we have a farm that River Bottoms that I grew up hunting on, and we were one of the first areas that actually had turkeys kind of released and relocated, and so I was fortunate to kind of, ever since I've been old enough to crawl, and I've had turkeys to hunt. And man, there some years, I remember one season I heard the first gobble on the 27th day that I hunted, and I was hunting, and there was a flock of birds, but man, there was just such a small population. They're not very vocal, extremely smart, and it took towards the end of April to the 1st of May for them, and we open around the 1st of April here, but it took towards the end of season for really them to bust up good, for that gobbler to get off by himself and to get a little lonely, because when he was with hens, just had lockdown. So yeah, you talk about hearing them gobbled and all that, man. As a hunter, no matter where you live in the States, these are the good days. And I know there's some populations maybe struggling this and that, but the NWTF has done an outstanding job to create opportunity for all of us.
Our population was down the last year. It was really, really bad, but I'm telling you what, I've been kind of putting my ears out in the woods and scouting, and the population has rebounded pretty well. If we can get another year, I don't know what happened. I guess we had a little bit of moisture. We weren't just totally bone dry.
We had a wet fall, not real wet fall, but we had some. It started raining in November a little bit, and it's rained November. I don't know why, but our numbers are back up a little bit.
Thank goodness, because last year it was bleak. And I've never experienced this. So I primarily hunt in Texas, and with Rios in my area, and I'll preface it by saying that the roost does not shift much. Once you kind of find the roost, it'll go 100 yards or so. Last year, it was miles shifting, and I've never experienced that before.
Yeah, That's hard. I mean, you know, there are areas I run a bunch of trail cameras on a certain time lapse. We can talk about that later, but I use that so much because I'm covering such a wide area, and I don't have enough time in the afternoons to try to put some to roost, so I can rely on technology to help me. But yeah, because we've got areas that my turkeys may be here today, a mile east tomorrow. You know, I mean, a long distance, and when they're flocked up like that, it's tough. But I know if they're at one particular spot at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I can just about tell you what tree they're going to roost in that night, just because of I'm hunting river bottom, so then again they're going to roost over water, and predominantly they're going to have a big enough tree, generally a pin oak or an oak or a big cypress that they're going to roost in. So when I see them in a certain area, I can say, yep, they're going to be over this flue in this tree, and you can be there at daylight the next morning, and you got a pretty high percentage chance. And outside of that, you kind of got to wait till the flocks bust up really good, and you kind of get some gobblers that want to get lonely and want to cooperate.
We, everybody wants to be out opening day and opening weekend. I love late season turkey hunting. When those birds bust up and they're lonely, and that's when it's really fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Years ago when I was actually in college and even younger, I thrived off if I couldn't get it done in the first 30 minutes, it was a disappointment,
right?
Because I always had a mindset in me that I wanted to be able to go out there and almost put a pie plate out there on the ground and him land on that pie plate, right. and literally, and there was I love slipping through the woods and they're still on the roost and getting in within 150 yards or so, and right when you think it's getting close to fly down, try to get them to face you on the limb.
Yeah.
And if you can get them to spin down, well, then 180 degrees behind them, you've eliminated.
Right.
So now, if they're facing you when they get ready to fly down, you start looking for opening spots in the woods and trying to guess where he's going to land. To me, that's what gets my adrenaline going, and that's the absolute best turkey hunt. But outside of that, yes, late season when they get by themselves and you actually have a little more distance and calling them in is awesome as well.
So you'll do that. So what do? You like kind of gauge how he sounds on the limb, whether he's facing you or facing away, and then you just
Absolutely.
try to, hey, look at me.
Yeah, and the hardest thing on that, of course, I'm in Tennessee here, and foliage varies from year to year. Right. This year, for example, we've got a lot of foliage early. So we're kind of in an early spring in a sense. And some years though, on flat ground, goodness, they can see so far away. Like, people's like, oh, you slip up on a roost. Listen, if you're going to slip up on an eastern on a roost and him not see you, like, you've accomplished something. Because, you're 150 yards, 200 yards out in an open woods. It's almost dang near impossible, but I like to get up. My main distance is when he hits the ground, you're within that. I want to be within that 100-yard range when he lands. Okay. Because then my odds of calling him another 55, 60 yards, 70 yards are greatly increased. Because what happens as soon as he hits the ground, he knows where his hens are at, and he's going to walk under their tree where they're at. But if I'm already within that 100-yard range, well, then he'll venture out 50, 60 yards looking for me. And at that point, you can, bring him in the rest of the way. So it's a cat mouse game, and you got to really rely on the woods. If you're in a short woods or if there's short woods between you, he's going to sound a lot farther than what he really is. If you're in an open woods, same thing. You got to be very careful and just kind of be aware. And I always like to keep trees in between me and him when I'm starting to, get that last 100 yards and just always stop by a tree where you're not pinned out in the open. Right. And just kind of use smart woodsmanship. And then at that point, just slip down beside a tree and sits tight for a little while. And then when you think he's going to start getting ready to fly down, I'll try to do a fly down at him or do something to get his attention, because I want him to flip around on that limb facing me. And if you could get him flip around on the limb, then you're pretty good odds, because that way when he pitches out, he's going to cover another 40 yards.
I've never chased Easterns. We're going to Michigan and Tennessee at the end of April. We're filming a show for Boss Shot Shells. And we're going to be in Michigan and Tennessee. So that's going to be my first time with Easterns. But I've always heard, like, they're notorious for just being these quiet little critters that, they don't gobble. I'm used to Rios. Like, you fart loud enough and you're going to get a gobble back out of a Rio. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the new challenge. So we'll see.
Yeah, they're special, man. I'm partial to Easterns as well. And they can be tough and they can be easy. And there's no shame in leaving a tough turkey to go find a 2-year-old that's easier to hunt. There's no shame in that at all.
It's lost on Jeff.
I'm not a turkey hunter. I've never shot a turkey in my life. So if I shoot one this spring, will be my first turkey ever.
He might just start with an Eastern.
And
nice.
What are they bigger than Rios?
Kelley?
I believe, yes, a little heavier in weight. I believe Rios are a little longer legs, correct me if I'm wrong. Biologically, I think they're a little taller. I know the Osceolas are as well. But Rios generally can be Easterns can be a little heavier. Rios are more vocal, generally are, and I've hunted Rios as well, generally could be a little, I don't want to use the term easier because that's such a broad brush, you know, because listen, I've shot a lot of really easy, dumb Easterns, but as a general rule, Easterns are a little harder as a general rule. But there's, Cuz Strickland said it best. There's no absolutes in turkey hunting. And so you can't paint that with a broad brush because there are some Rios that are tough birds and they've gotten educated and tough to hunt. And the same thing with Easterns. But in generalistic terms, a lot of times your Easterns can be a little tougher tactics, I should say. And
then I also like mid-morning. I love mid-morning. When they get away from, because I've noticed here, there's so many dadgum hens. And I mean, it's just, you're pissing in the wind, basically. Like when he's got 5 or 6 girls around him, he's done for a little bit. So,
yep. Generally, they're going to go off to build nests and stuff at, mid-morning, and they'll start walking faster and he starts walking slow. Next thing you know, he's by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we were talking Tennessee football earlier. What, that Hooker kid, he's a senior, isn't he? He's out. Is he going to the draft?
Yeah. He is. He's draft eligible. He is. Actually, I was reading an article this morning that, what team was looking at him? I'm trying to think. I mean, of course, you see all kind of speculation and this and that, but potential late first round, which I would be very shocked. But man, I hope I'm telling you, man, when he's healthy, and I know he's in a favorable offense, but still, man, his touchdown to interception ratio was pretty impressive. And not only that, a high character athlete, and that's hard to beat.
The problem we're not dealing with it because we're not idiots. Some billionaires are not very smart. I've noticed, and NFL owners are the worst. They draft people that have zero chance of being an NFL quarterback, and it happens every single year. If you're an NFL team right now and you're drafting a quarterback and you don't take the kid from Ohio State with the first pick, you're a fool. He is by far the best college quarterback out there. Someone is going to take Anthony Richardson right off the bat because he's 6'4" and he won the underwear Olympics. I don't care if he won the underwear Olympics or not. It happens every single year. You're not dealing with the Donovan McNabb. You're not dealing with the Michael Vick. You're dealing with a guy at Florida that could not win, basically. And so it's not going to change in the pros.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and it baffles me because Will Levis with Kentucky, and a great athlete, all that, but for Mel Kiper had him projected, go number 1, and golly, and I know Kentucky struggled on the offensive line and this and that, but goodness, he was given the reins, he was given the ball, and time again, like through bad choices, interception, and I don't know, it's just hard to overlook that, and regardless of measurables, and it's hard for me to. Like I say, try to get in the minds of some of these GMs, but how could they only look at measurables and not look at on-the-field performance? Sometimes blows my mind.
It's a football player you're trying to draft, and they do it all the time. I'll give you 2 examples. One thing I would do right now, and I'm not a general manager for NFL. If I was the Indianapolis Colts general manager, I would call the Baltimore Ravens. And first, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a Lamar Jackson guy because I don't think Lamar Jackson's ever going to put you in the Super Bowl. Never. I don't think he's that good a quarterback. He's a running back that can throw the ball. Is all he is. He should be in a single wing offense. If I was Indianapolis, instead of trying to take Will Levis or the short kid from Alabama, which is going to be another Kyler Murray, as soon as he gets his legs hurt, he's done. Go out and trade your first round pick and next year's first round pick. And draft and trade for Lamar Jackson, or wait until after the draft's over and draft who you want, who's the best player available at number 1, which is probably that defensive tackle. Draft that kid and then trade next year's first round pick for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson and Baltimore are so fractured; they're never going to have it. He's not playing for them ever again. It's the same with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers have got Green Bay over a barrel. Green Bay don't think they do. If I was the Jets, I'd say, fine, we don't want him. Pay him $60 million. They don't want to pay him $60 million. So they're either going to release him or they're going to take a 5th-round pick for him just to get rid of him. Same with Lamar Jackson. Make Baltimore trade you to him, because if Lamar Jackson goes to Indy with him and Jonathan Taylor, they're a 10-12 win team probably. They're not going to be in the Super Bowl, but they're not going to be in the Super Bowl regardless.
That's true. Yep, that is true. No, that's a good point.
This has Hendon going to the Vikings, is what they're saying.
That's what. Yeah, I read that this morning. So he would be backup for Cousins and could learn under that.
That's not a bad way to go.
Patrick Mahomes sat behind someone for a year, so sitting behind somebody for a year is probably really good for you.
Yeah, he would be a good, safe backup that's going to learn the system, high character. Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
I don't know where we've gotten in the NFL to where it's like if the guy didn't start year one, it's teams frown upon that.
Yeah,
let him sit for a year or two or however long it takes and learn the ins and outs of how to become an NFL quarterback. Learn how to study. Learn how to read defenses.
It's the only position that you need to be able to sit on the bench for a year. If you get a defensive tackle first round and he ain't playing right now, you wasted your pick. But if you get a quarterback, he needs to set a year. The kid from TCU is going to be a late round draft. Somebody's going to pick him up in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round, and that kid's a really good quarterback, and he's a winner, and he's a gamer. And so I think if he goes somewhere, I could see him sitting on the bench for a couple of years and being a player. Look at Brock Purdy, same way.
Yeah. Same way. Yep, same way. The 49ers got Juwan Jennings. I believe he was their last pick in a late round, and of course, that was back when Tennessee was really struggling, but he has that fight in him. He has that dog in him. And goodness, he was the one that caught the Hail Mary pass over the win against Georgia years ago. And without a doubt, Tennessee fans could have told you this. You throw a Hail Mary up and you've got a wide receiver. Juwan Jennings is coming down with the ball. I mean, he's got that fight. He's tough. And so, yeah, and people might have thought that was kind of a little bit of a risk with the 49ers, and now look where he's there. I mean, he's just he just has it. His measurables may not line up as good, but man, he's got that fight. He's just a tough
I felt
guy.
bad because like I said, one of my good friends, he graduated from Tennessee and lifelong Vols fan, and I was really, really rooting for them last year. And when that Hooker kid got hurt, like it changed everything.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you hate to see that. Even your rival, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's a team that's your rival, you don't want to see anybody get hurt. And for Hooker to get hurt, it was gut wrenching. It was a tough to see because you wanted the team to do well, but not only that, but with Tennessee's standpoint, I mean, with Joe Milton as a backup, and this guy's got a cannon, and he's got all the measurables. Like goodness, if he. This time last year, Hendon Hooker was kind of a big question mark. He transferred in from Virginia Tech. Nobody really knew where he was going to be. And then, so now here Joe Milton was that truthfully, I think it's a good story in itself that this kid could have left, had all the right to leave, could have started for a lot of programs. Let me say that. He came from Michigan and started at Michigan for half of their season, transferred into Tennessee. And last year he could have left, but him and Hendon Hooker become best friends. They roomed together, and he was his backup. And because he knew the writing was on the wall that he was in a good system with Josh Heupel. Mm-hmm. And then his senior year, he's going to have the reins. That's a good story in itself because the NIL days and this and that, he could have easily left. But he bid his time, learned more of the system. And on paper, I mean, man, his stock has to be good going into next year's draft because he's in a system to where he can really show out. And if he does, he's in the driver's seat to be a good high round, draft.
Well, I was always going against Tennessee because all I heard was Peyton Manning from from our friend Ryan. That's all we ever used to hear about. And I got so sick and tired of that shit. So I always was against Tennessee. Then I started feeling sorry for Tennessee because they've been on the bottom. And then I was so happy when they beat Alabama this year. But all my friends in Oklahoma say Heupel's going to go to OU in a year or so.
Yeah, that's interesting. But apparently, and you guys may know more about this than I, but there's a lot of bad blood. I mean, with him and Stoops, and they're like, there is no way he would even attempt to go back. So I don't know. I mean, it's he's a bright offensive mind.
Where is he from? Where did he grow up at?
Was it Iowa?
So he's not in Oklahoma. He didn't grow up in Oklahoma.
Or I think South Dakota.
I think
is that
you
right?
are right. Yeah, let me.
Somebody told me
Aberdeen,
that,
South Dakota.
Well, that's a chance he'll stay in Tennessee. But those people in Oklahoma, they breed different. So once in Oklahoma, they can't figure out how to get out of there sometimes. So
What?
I can sense a little rivalry there. Maybe Texas area, Oklahoma.
University of Oklahoma is the University of Texas at Norman. They just don't call it that,
Okay.
but that's what it should be.
All their recruits are from the Lone Star State, most of them.
Texas and Oklahoma, I think, bit off more than they really want to chew. I think
SEC?
about every 3 years, one of them is going to have a really good team. They have the athletes to play in the SEC. They do. Both of them do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man, what they've done is they've opened the Big 12 up for TCU, Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor to be in the playoffs, because about every 3 years, one of them teams is going to have a really good, solid football team. But I think Texas and Oklahoma, the reality of what they're fixing to go through is not what they're expecting, I think.
Yeah, it's a little different when you're doing it every Saturday. You know, it's a grind. And granted, you know, you've got your easy team, some sort, and then but still it's a tough. There's still goodness, Tennessee's schedule. You know, Alabama, Georgia, on the road at LSU, Florida. I mean, I can go. You know, and it's just you keep doing that, and out of conference. Actually, we were supposed to play Oklahoma next season. In Neyland, but now since they're joining the SEC, obviously that game has been opted out or canceled by the conference. And I believe Tennessee just added NC State. They're going to start not this coming season, but the next season they'll start them in Charlotte.
Well, when you go through the Big 12 and you go to the stadiums and you take out Texas and Oklahoma Stadium, and I'm going to say Oklahoma State also, because Oklahoma State has a really good venue. Texas Tech holds, 60,000 people, 65,000 maybe? Yeah. You know, when you go to the SEC game, everybody's 80,000 people right on top of you.
Yep.
Even if you go to Kentucky or if you go to Vanderbilt, I'm assuming Vanderbilt sells out all their games, don't they?
They're probably the least out of all the SEC schools. I can tell you this: when Tennessee plays at Vandy, it's about a 70% Tennessee crowd.
I figured it was that way most everybody that played there.
But now, to give you credit, Vanderbilt, not just in recent last 2 years, but prior to that, especially when, James Franklin was there, man, he turned Vanderbilt into a turned into a respectful program. And like you say, fan bases, crowd. And, I was there when Oklahoma played, but when Baker Mayfield, we've got season tickets and I'm on the first row of the upper deck. So I've got a bar right there. And he was right below me in overtime when he ran in the touchdown. But, his center was even saying, I think it was quoted in the media that the ball was shaking. You got 102,000 fans. It is it's a different dynamic. And if you haven't been a part of that, man, y'all, I'm telling you, Neyland Stadium, and I've said this, and I've been to Norman and different other, stadiums, and of course Death Valley and Louisiana and LSU is the same thing. But Neyland Stadium, when it's rocking, it's hard to beat. Neyland Stadium at night is a very intimidating place to play. But you got to have the right opponent. You got to have a rival. You saw that with the Alabama game last year. Goodness gracious, man. Unfortunately, my brother and the rest of my family was there, and I was in Canada. So we were watching on a TV and hooping and hollering and all that. But it is a different dynamic. And like I said, when Oklahoma played and Baker Mayfield, in overtime, I watched him run the touchdown in right below us.
Yeah,
his quotes about it was impressive.
SEC college football is at a different pedestal. It's like Texas high school football. Until you experience, it's like going to Fenway Park and watching a Major League Baseball game. There's certain places, but anywhere in the SEC is a unique place, and you can't you just don't get it anywhere else. You might have a game here or there with some rivalry that's big, but every conference game is huge there. And I think Texas and Oklahoma are going to see the difference between going to Baylor or going to Lubbock when you're going to Ole Miss and you're going to Tennessee and you're going to LSU.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I haven't heard that before, but it's like comparing Tennessee high school football to Texas high school football.
Right.
Texas high school football is in a class of its own. Stadiums are bigger. It's almost like, mini college teams there. And that's right. And SEC football compared to most other conferences, it's just a different, they use the term, it just means more. And it's, man, it's some passionate fan bases, but a little bit of history about that too. In the Southeast, historically, when I grew up, everybody followed college football. It wasn't, you didn't have a whole lot of NFL fans.
Right.
You didn't have that like you have in the Northeast and way out west. And then when the Titans moved to Nashville, or or the Oilers, then you started getting a little bit more of that. And of course, you had the St. Louis, the Rams in St. Louis, and of course, then they moved out. But before that, like, it wasn't a whole lot of big, passionate fan bases that followed the NFL. It was all college football. And I mean, you look at just the state of Alabama and Georgia right there side by side. You've got Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Tennessee within just a couple-hour drive of each other. I mean, it's a pretty passionate area to live in.
Texas Tech Stadium will hold 60,000, and Neyland Stadium's 102? I think
102, 455, 102,000. That's a pretty common number. Yeah.
You got that down.
Since we're talking Tennessee, I want to switch over to the Titans real quick.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
They're wanting to get rid of Derrick Henry. I don't understand that, but I don't understand why anybody would trade a lot for running back with a lot of miles on him. And I think he still has it. But
yeah, but he might just have it for one more year.
I mean, you're not going to trade the house for him. If you gave him a 5th-round draft pick for it, Tennessee might be coming out way ahead. But
yeah,
that's a tough deal. But he makes a lot of money.
He makes a lot, and apparently, running backs when they get to that age are disposable apparently. And I don't, but I'm like you. I think he's got a lot of he's still got a few good years ahead of him. So I don't know, man. There's such a it's a tough one to follow there, and we're I want to follow the Titans, and we do, and but it's I don't know. That's a hard one. I can't put my finger on it.
I don't understand. They traded A.J. Brown, their best wide receiver.
Yep.
They're going to get rid of Derrick Henry. They didn't make a who's their Dupree, Marcus Dupree. Was that his name, or Bud Dupree? Bud Dupree.
Yeah, Bud Dupree.
They're going to let him walk. I just don't understand what they're telling their fan base.
I think it's almost like we're going to gut everything and literally start over from scratch.
Well, they were so close though. That's what's sad.
I know. They were so close, and the when the Brown, when they traded him, it was that was a tough deal. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's a deal where I don't see them, Derrick Henry. I see them keeping him just from the fan base standpoint, but I don't know. I don't get paid the big bucks to make that decision.
Jacksonville will be in a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, they look good.
They do. Trevor Lawrence.
He looks awesome. Etienne looks good. Now they got Calvin Ridley going to be suiting up for him this year. Christian Kirk. They got.
Yep.
I mean, they're freaking loaded. They got a great defense. They've drafted well. I think Jacksonville's the one that's going to break through in the AFC next.
Yeah, and at some point you think the Bill, I don't know, you want to see, but
their window's closing.
Yeah, they are. Their window's closing, and I don't. It's crazy I'll say this, but Josh Allen's looked a little vulnerable when it got to the big games, and so I kind of compare that. I'll throw that back to his college days. You come from Wyoming, has all the measurables, but now you get in big games, there seems a little bit of inexperience. I don't want to say inexperience, that's not the right term, but vulnerable is more than anything. It just, I don't know. It's just, there are times that he did not step ahead where someone like Patrick Mahomes become a leader and won the game.
Well, he don't play defense, and they lost the game because of the defense, not because of Josh Allen.
Well,
that is a good point.
Josh Allen to me seems kind of like a throwback to like this. He's a bigger Brett Favre, but like he still kind of has that gunslinger mentality, and you never know what Josh Allen's going to do.
They need to make a trade for Derrick Henry because they're running back poor.
And
that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Goodness gracious, Josh Allen and Derrick Henry.
But Patrick Mahomes, like it's almost annoying.
He's good.
It's almost annoying how, if he's got a minute and a half and a timeout in his pocket, he's going to drive the field on you. Like, you just know. Like with Josh Allen, you're like, it's not a for sure thing.
And something needs to be said. I mean, I can relate this in calling competition world, in any kind of competitive sports. When you've been somewhat in that position and you've won and you expect to win, it's so much of this game is mental and mental preparation. And when you get in those moments, you're playing to win, not playing it safe. And Patrick Mahomes takes those risks because he knows he's fixing to win the game. And I think when Josh Allen gets in those situations, there's a little bit of a mental aspect there, of a little bit of a timidness I'm afraid of making mistakes and not playing to win. I don't know. That's obviously my opinion, but I think he's an outstanding athlete. Sure. And I kind of selfishly, I was rooting for him this year just because I want to see him do well. But I do agree with you. It's not fair to put that on his shoulders. I mean, that's a team deal, and a defense kind of let them down in some sense. But at the end of the day, I still think my point holds true that when you've won and you've been there, it's a reason why you see Super Bowl champions kind of when they get back in the playoffs and they're still there, they're a tough out because they're used to winning and they expect to make it back to the Super Bowl.
I think Von Miller getting hurt killed them this year.
Probably.
That really changed the whole dynamics. When he was there, they were looking at what they were like 8-2, and they were looking like they were the team to beat. And they just never, ever recovered because their defense couldn't put pressure on. And they used to be so good defensively.
Yeah.
That guy's done a hell of a job coaching there. And it's made for exciting football. So
no,
going back to the calling world, when did you turn the switch? Because you won in 99, right? That was the year?
Correct.
And then they get in 2000, the champion of champions.
Yep.
So when did it all switch for you to where you started like playing to win and not just playing to get your top finish?
So, when I was in the mid 90s and I was in school and in 97, actually I graduated high school in 97 and I told my parents, and this is a crazy, I call it a redneck dream. But I always had this idea that number one, I wanted to do something in the outdoor industry. Did not care what it was, whether it was an outdoor rep and product design. I wanted to do something because my passion was outdoors, hunting, turkey hunting, waterfowl hunting, all of that. And for some crazy idea, I thought, if I could win a calling contest, that would help on my resume. It might, I wanted to walk into a door of a business in the outdoor industry and them knew who I was before the door opened.
Right.
That was my goal. And the path to that was to win calling contest, and which is crazy and kind of whatever. But not only that, like it's just a part of me. Like if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best. I want to do it. It's a competitive spirit. I think all of us kind of have in some sense. So in 97, that was kind of my dream. And I called in my first contest that summer. And I come in fourth place, actually, is in Ballard County, Kentucky. And there were some heavy hitters there. And I kind of thought there's something here. I went to the World in 98. And at that time I was blowing a Tim Grounds flute call, the old Guide's Best. And I went and I won, or I'm sorry, I went up there, and I think I came in the bottom 5. I mean, it was horrible. I got my teeth kicked in, it was awful. Well, then there was a particular time, after that, I watched the guys that were at the top were blowing, top 2 were blowing short reeds. And I realized, man, now wait a minute. Now this is down my alley. I can do this, and I could blow a short reed, but I can use flute style techniques and make certain sounds with flutes and moans and the way you roll in your clucks and this and that. I can use those, but translate it over to a short reed call. I can go and I saw right quick. I felt like I could do that better than what they were doing. And that's just my competitive spirit. It's not a degrade on them. And something happened in that after that contest to where, initial reactions when you get beat, and don't kid yourselves. I mean, I got my teeth kicked in. It wasn't that I wasn't just, or, it wasn't a raw deal or I got judged wrong. No, I got beat, and I got beat bad. And initially there's a little bit of pushback, like, oh, they just don't like my style, or they just don't like this. And, there's a natural tendency to be a little sore loser, but something happened that summer after that to where I realized that, just because something doesn't go right in life, you need to view that as an opportunity, not as a disappointment. And I took that as like, all right, here's my opportunity to take something wrong, and what can I do to win? And then so I went that whole summer when I got back, and then the following summer, like I say, and I've had a big upbringing in percussion and band and stuff like that. So I've always felt like in calling contests, which doesn't matter, duck call, goose call, turkey call, there's a lack of a standardization from a musical note standpoint. I can go and grab a piece, on the piano, and I can read music, and none of that exists in calling world. It's a void. There's no standardization. There's nobody writing notes. There's nobody, none of that happens. And I'm hoping I may be dead and gone, and somebody says, well, Kelley was screaming for this back then, but it's a musical instrument, just like a trumpet, like a drum, like a whatever. So I went back and I literally wrote down my winning routine on a sheet of notebook paper, note for note, like, hail cluck, lower pitch cluck, all of that. I mean, it was the boringest thing to read, but I wrote that out, and then I started putting it together. And then I, just through the percussion world and learning that, I would always, and I've always stressed to people that I've tried to help coach and whatever after since then. But when you practice, don't practice, the brain can only comprehend so much. It's so, so much. So many callers would try to practice their whole routine, and that's all they do. Mm-hmm. And I would just tell them, only practice on like segments. So let's just consider your first 20 seconds of your routine. That's all I'm going to work on, not today, not tomorrow, but all week. All I'm going to do when I first pick that call up, I want to maximize my time practicing. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to blow just this intro segment for the first 20 seconds, and then I'm going to do it again. Then I'm going to do it again, and then master that. Well, then 2 weeks later, I'm going to pick up the next section, and I'm going to do that. And then I literally would not blow that final routine until I was about a month out for the world contest. And then a month out, then I started taking those segments and then creating my transition points and putting those together. And then at that point, it was like a song that the chorus to real well. It was second nature. And when you do that and you know it that well, when you mess up and you make a mistake, you can disguise it because you're so used to what you're doing. And I could do other things and hide it. And I should have been cut, but I've done well. But so I did it that summer. And then, like I said, I went and at that time, it was the largest margin the world was ever won by. And that was in 99. And then I went back the next year, which was the Champion of Champions that only former world champions can call in. I didn't, honestly, Josh Neuweiler won the junior world 3 times, senior world 3 times. And I felt like he was heavily favored. And I won the Champion of Champions. So then I'm like, well, great. Now I'm done with the world because you can't call. They won't let you call it anymore. And then after that, fortunately, all the other contests you could still call in that weren't affiliated with the world. There's not a qualification standpoint. So I just kind of set a go. I want to win them all. I wanted, if I were to rank the top 10, I wanted to do that. And so I went on and won the World Open, the North American Masters, the International, the U.S. Open twice, world team with 2 different teams twice. So that's kind of something that I just did. And I did that all the way until, I think the last contest I called in, I won the World Duck in 2008. I won it for the World Meat Duck, I should say. And I won it for, I don't know, like 4 years in a row. And then it changed the name to the Illinois State Meat Duck. I think the last year I won it. And that was it, but I say all that to say this. And I just kind of, what I was saying, with TV shows, we film hunting shows, and you guys do as well. We show the edited stuff, and that's what the consumer sees and the viewer sees. And what I just told you were the highlights. In a sense, what I didn't tell you were the times that I did get my teeth kicked in and I got beat. And I've told this to people. I said, man, every time I get beat, like when I ride on the ride home, I'm writing down notes because I'm coming after you the next contest. I'm writing down notes on how to be better. And then when I win the next weekend, guess what I'm doing on the way home?
Notes.
I'm not stopping writing down notes of how I can be better.
Yeah.
And it was just, that was what was driving me, to do that. But just because something doesn't go right, man, just look for the opportunity because it's right there in front of you.
I understand why they put a limit on how many worlds you can win. I understand, but I don't know that I agree with it. I mean, you're not going to set Tom Brady down and say, well, hold on, Tom, you've won 3, you're done. But you don't want this. You don't want the same guys winning over and over again. But at some point, you also got to say, like, well, just beat them.
The people that don't win, they'll whine. It's the world we live in nowadays.
Yeah. I would have loved to compete against, grounds. Tim was retired. Of course, I competed against Tim a ton, but I would love to be on the world stage doing that, and not be retired. And there's multiple others out there too that, to do that. I agree with you. It's just kind of a precedent that's set and kind of tradition, and it's kind of stuck with it. But I really think most callers kind of feel the same way that you do.
Right. I mean,
If you're gonna be the best at something, then have to beat the best.
Well, it's not just that. It's like, there's always these debates. Well, like who would beat who and who would beat this guy? Well, like you could just don't have these guys time out or win out, and you can decide it on the biggest stage that there is in calling competitions.
Yeah. And listen, and I get asked that a bunch too, and like this and that. And there's a handful of guys that listen. I mean, the competitive spirit with me is like, oh, when I'm at my best, absolutely, I can beat them all.
Right.
That's the competitive spirit. But I'd be lying if I told you that like I wouldn't have my work cut out for me for a handful of them. Because when they're at their best, they're a handful. And that's highly respectful of. I mean, I have the utmost respect for them. And because at the end of the day, man, when we're off that stage, some of my best friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And granted, I want to beat them, and I'm just competitive and this and that, but when it's all said and done, man, like I'm hoping they're doing well, their family's doing well, and it's a different thing. But yeah, you give some talent. Grounds is the prime example, and he's probably the best that I've ever, and for me to be blessed to be with Tim, and to spend so much time with him, you don't realize what you have until someone's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so true. And I didn't realize that. And you realize it now, but Tim's a prime example. Before the international, when he won the international, and I come in second. It's my best second place finish ever. And Tim won the international. But what was funny up to that, we always told Tim, like, Tim, if you could consistently put a routine together and do that for 3 straight routines, because Tim would normally just go off the wall and do crazy stuff and never really have some sort of consistency to him, and you never knew what you're going to get. But like, if you would just practice, and at the time we were blowing the warning guts, and he started doing that as well, and like, nobody can beat you, like, because the talent is there. It's just, it goes back to the football discussion we had earlier. It's the mental. Now there's the mental game.
Right.
You have to be and contest calling is no different. It's 90% mental, 10% application. And if you get mentally in the right mindset and all these different things that you can do, like Tim has the talent to when that 10% is needed, like nobody can touch him. And he showed that at the international. It was one of the greatest experiences I've been across. I remember Hunter was little bitty and tearing up, and his dad, I mean, an awesome scenery, but to see Tim win that, like it's just the perfect example of that. So there are guys out there, and let's not kid ourselves. There are guys out there that do not even contest call. If I could go and help maybe coach them on just some pointers of what to do in calling competitions, they would be tough to beat.
Right.
You don't have to be a contest caller just because they're that talented.
Right.
And so you would have to coach them on the mental aspect, because they got the 10% of the application part that they can do the notes. It's just the mental aspect that they can do it. And there's been countless guys that I've been fortunate to help since I retired, that have gone on and done well. And it's Kyle, you introduced me to him, and Kyle is no different. Like, oh my gosh, all the talent in the world, and it's just, but there's a mental aspect, and there's different things that you can kind of paint the picture of. And like I always told Kyle, I was like, listen, just because I'm going to push you and I might make you mad, but I'm going to keep pushing you. But at the end of the day, just because I say it, I want you to be original as well. Collectively, a team is way better than an individual going solo. And if you have a team aspect to it, and you take criticism and try to, like, you can become an unstoppable force.
Who got you into calling?
Oh gosh. So I grew up, I've got 2 older brothers. My oldest brother is an unbelievable duck hunter and goose caller as well, but awesome duck caller. I would say them. And then from a contest calling standpoint, Trent Allman, which he did some stuff for Night and Hail. Trent's he is an absolute unbelievable hunter, outdoorsman. It doesn't matter what he's doing. And we all have friends like that it doesn't matter. Turkey hunting, crappie fishing, whatever, like, you got it. Like, you're an outdoorsman. You're going to figure it out. Whether if you got to whittle your own call out of some cane, you're going to do it, and you're going to kill it. And I always use the terminology, if my survival depended on killing this turkey this afternoon, then I'm going to hand Trent the gun and the call. Because, that's true, and so I grew up with people around that were just outstanding, and so Trent did some calling and contest calling. He placed in the top 5 at the World Open and all that. So he's one that really, he was like a brother to me growing up, because him and my middle brother Trip were the same age. And so I mean, every weekend Trent's at the house and all during the week, we're doing things together. So I grew up in that environment. And I can tell you this, when I was old enough to even walk and start hunting, I mean, you didn't miss a single day of duck season. You have a 60-day duck season. Like if you miss, it's a sin. And I'm just being honest. Like you're getting picked on, you sleep in, like you're getting ragged and made fun of, and like, oh, you don't care, you just sleep in, you stay out all night, that's what I grew up around. Like you didn't miss a single day of duck season. And I mean, even like when our high school, when they had the zero tolerance, you can't bring firearms and all this. Of course, it's a different environment now, unfortunately. But we all the time I had the shotgun in my truck.
Yeah.
Because I duck hunted that morning. I could leave the duck blind at 7:30 in the morning and be in school at about 7:50. And then every day at 3:00, I left it. I mean, I'm running out of the school at 3 and I'm back in the duck blind by about 3:20. And that's every single day. So, and that's how I grew up. And like I said, and my oldest brother today, I mean, we come from a farming background. So farming and hunting, waterfowl hunting kind of go together where the occupation where you can kind of do that. And my oldest brother, even to this day, I mean, listen, if he's not duck hunting, like something's bad. Like he's in a hospital, and that's it. And it doesn't matter as bad as the hunting is. So I grew up in that culture and that environment, and it's helped mold me. And of course, now that I've gotten older and have kids, priorities, and there are times that you can't go, or different things, or you try to play the weather and go on, but you're still hunting for the most part. For sure you're involved in it every day, whether it's checking on a blind or I mean, it's just it's an everyday deal. That's like I said, that's the culture I grew up around.
How is the hunting from Brian and Matt Sullivan? All I hear is how bad the hunting is now in that area. Is it as bad down there as it's always over?
Yes,
it's over. It's over.
And, that's a blast from the past, the Sullivans. Those are another two guys that come from a mode that was, oh goodness, they come from even with, I guess you could say, from the grounds pedigree.
Yes.
And I'll get to your question in a minute. I will say this: I use the terminology, and I wish I come up with it. Somebody, I saw it online, but said if Tim Grounds was if the waterfowl hunting was a tree, Tim Grounds, or was an oak tree, Tim Grounds would be the trunk.
Right.
And and there's a lot of truth to that. And you look at the Sullivans, and they kind of come from that pedigree, and you got Romettas and Lanhams, and I mean Scray Stevens, and I mean it's a who's list that kind of collaborated with Tim, and you go even for Zink and Full. I mean it's crazy. So you mentioned Sullivan, that's a path down memory road there of fun times and funny stories. But yes, when they say the duck hunting in this area, I will say goose hunting, Southern Illinois, yes, it's a very sad state. Used to be they claimed as the Canada goose hunting capital of the world there at Marion, Illinois, in Crab Orchard. And I saw the very tail end of that when it, in the mid 90s. And then after that, it really fell off a cliff. But outside of that, right now you've got resident Canadas, and you don't got a lot of migratory geese anymore. And it's a sad situation because, you'll still drive by a lot of the old clubs, and they still probably have some pits in the ground, but used to, I mean, these were unbelievable places. And where Sullivan came from, both of them, is they come from a pedigree to where it was that we call like power hunting. I mean, it was big spreads, a lot of calling, and when you have that amount of creativity, entrepreneurial as far as designing products because they want to be better than the hunter across the road, and competition, man, it's like SEC football. Either you got to get better or you're going to get left behind. And back then, that's what Crab Orchard area was. I mean, it was like a cutthroat. It was you're some of the best hunters in the world. So yeah, Sullivan and them, it's funny they come out of that pedigree and now it moved off in different areas. And but the goose hunting is nowhere near like it was. A lot of those clubs have switched to duck hunting. It's concerning here, just our lack of mallards and the migration paths have changed. There's a lot of thought process and theories, this and that. I can simplify it easy as this. Right now, there are landowners anywhere up and down the flyway that are having discussions about flooding up their back 40 acres they got and create our own little refuge and this and that. And it's only sustainable so long before migration paths will slow down and they will change a little bit. And it's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not pointing fingers by any means. It's just everybody is getting better at holding ducks and attracting ducks and hunting ducks.
Yeah. We've talked about that a lot. We are probably the best at killing that we've ever been. I mean, when you look at it, like it's, with the technology that we have and the spinners and the calls and the decoys and the blinds and the way that we can access them now, where a long time ago, if they were, you didn't have the mud buddies and the go devils and stuff like that. They were just at a part in the river you couldn't get to them at. But now there's nothing that's off limits to these ducks. There's no safe place anymore.
No. And so year in, year out, day in, day out, those ducks become imprinted to where, number one, when they get to their wintering areas, they become nocturnal.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem hard. And regardless, they become nocturnal because they hear an ATV drive in on a levee every morning at 5:30, 6 a.m., or they hear an outboard motor or a GOTA or a surface drive, whatever, like they hear those things. And then they start hearing gunshots. And then, and that duck could just be sitting down over on a safe piece of water, but they're getting out of there. Like that noise and that kind of disruption, they're going to find a place to where they're not disturbed. And it's interesting. We are seeing that now because of technology with GPS tracked birds. The Tennessee Mallard Project and actually it's Cohen Wildlife. If you guys don't follow on Instagram, it's outstanding. They do tons of research here in Tennessee. But I was fortunate to go and ban mallards and ducks with them, me and my son and our crew here at Final Flight, and helped them out. And the research that they have, we can see that when it was interesting that the guy that's in charge of it, Corey, he said, when I started doing this, I thought when I trap birds in West Tennessee in December that I'm going to follow these birds. They're going to be in Arkansas next, and then in Louisiana, and then whatever. Then I'm going to follow back at the flyway. It didn't happen. When he trapped them in Tennessee in December, they were in Tennessee in January up to the middle part of February, and then they went back to the nesting grounds. And next fall, they come right back to the same little small area in Tennessee. And it's wild because there's not a lot of, once they get to their wintering area, there's not a lot of what we call traffic. I grew up hunting traffic. We hunt river bottoms, you hunt traffic because that's what ducks do. They get up and fly every morning. They look for food sources and all that. Well, that is diminishing every year. You don't see traffic anymore. And a lot of it is disturbances of overhunted and pressure. And then number two, of private landowners doing a good job of managing the resource, and they're not hunting their private refuges, or they're not, and all that. So you see some of you, and part of the reason you see some of your best hunts the last week in the season is because everybody's out hunting. They're saving their best stuff and like, well, we're going to go burn our refuge down now. We've saved it all season. We hunted beside our refuge, but come that last Saturday and Sunday, we're going to go in there and hunt the refuge. And a lot of people think, well, birds finally showed up. Well, no, they've been here the whole time. We just hadn't seen them. They just been setting. Yeah, they just been saving them.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah, you're right. Like there's a bunch of birds on here that just never left Tennessee or never left that little nook that they.
Why would you leave? You got food, you got water, and no pressure.
That's it. And when they do leave and they get harassed or shot into and all that, and what he's finding is when they do leave, there's two things. Most of the time it is at night, it's nocturnal, and they're probably going to a private area that has standing crop, but it's after dark. And they're leaving way before shooting time gets there. So when the hunters get there, they don't even know, they say the water's muddy and they were there overnight, but the ducks were, but they don't know what time they left. And then the other trigger that moves them is an extreme weather event. If you have an extreme cold, and you can see on some of his GPS marked birds, extreme cold, you would have ducks they'd go 90 miles, 100 miles south. They'd ride it out for 3 or 4 days. And as soon as it started warming up, they come right back to the exact same area in West Tennessee. Now, this is just a small sample size of West Tennessee ducks, but it's obvious that's going on all across the whole
When you read any of the old Nash Buckingham books, he talks about the cold weather and the hunting and the places, but he always talked, and nobody ever talks about it, the hidden honey holes. The honey holes. There was a hole. I knew about a honey hole here in an oxbow and a lake. Nobody ever hunted them, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's none of them places left anymore.
GPS has a lot to Onyx has a lot to do with that too. Because
but this place would have been an Onyx. This would have been in the middle of a frozen or flooded timber where nobody went to because it was too much work. They had field bosses back then, which was usually a black gentleman that worked for a hunting club, and he would push him in on a P-row or one of those, I don't know what you call it, a canoe, flat bottom boat with a stick, and that was that guy's job. Well, it was so hard to get in there, they just didn't go. But they would know these hidden places back there, and if the weather would get real bad, it would push those birds out of there and it'd move them around much. Well, those places now are all hunted. Flat bottom or airboats, mud buddies. Every place, there's no hidden places anymore in the United States.
So you're saying it's too easy to get to these places?
Everybody can get to them.
Right.
When we were in Canada hunting, me and Andy found a back road one time, and we found a slough, and it had wheat stubble, and we shot a bunch of mallards and geese one morning, a bunch. That was a place that don't get hunted very often. It was the middle of nowhere. There was no traffic up there. Those places you don't find no more.
Right.
And you might in Canada. You might in the Amazon jungle shooting teal somewhere, but you're not going to
Mexico with Ramsey Russell.
You're not going to in the United States anymore, hardly at all. You know, even Wyoming, right. They're hot water ponds. Everybody's hunting them now.
Yeah, you're right, and that's and it's a sad state. Nothing to do about it, but it's just it's just the resource is managed well, and a lot of that is private landowners are managing their own properties well. And the Canada Goose situation is such a sad, man. It's just I grew up, and that's a common question people ask me, like, man, what does a Tennessee boy learn to blow a goose call like that? Like, I don't get that many geese. Well, when I was a kid, we did. I mean, Reelfoot Lakewood went over 100,000, up to 150,000 Canada geese every winter. It was in my backyard. Like we had, I mean, it wasn't, it was common. And now, like, goodness, you don't see anything, other than residents. But a lot of that, I mean, and go into a little spiel on it and call this out back even in the 90s, you could see the writing on the wall. Number one, the population of no-till, or the popularity of no-till farming, had a huge impact on our Canada goose migration. And I'm going to lay these factors out, and then I'll come back and kind of explain more. No-till farming, power plants, cooling lakes, and then resident population of Canada geese, the reintroduction of the residents. So how all those play in harmony together is, we found a subspecies of the Canada goose that we didn't even think existed, and we relocated them. They turned into park geese. They're genetic. God gave them, hey, they got a longer bill length. They're heavier in weight. They're genetically designed to not migrate. That is how God built them. So we put them in areas specifically like Chicago, this and that. Well, then they explode. So they explode in numbers. All right. Well, then you've got no-till farming, which historically, before no-till farming came really popular in the 80s and 90s, is, every fall when fields are harvested, first thing the farmers do, specifically up north in the Illinois plains and the Dakotas and Minnesota and all that, is they disc the fields under. So any excess grain that comes out of the combine is now flipped, and now it's just dirt. So any available food source is not available. So the residents are there. They got plenty of food source to go in, all that. The third factor of all of this is the cooling lakes. So that never freezes. I mean, there are friends of mine that are up there. They're bass fishing in January, and it's water temperatures 55, 60 degrees, and I'm froze solid in Tennessee. It's not right. Like that's not natural thing. So the grand scheme of things is you've got Johnny Migrator Canada Goose coming out of Manitoba. He's not going to fly over a million of his buddies that look like him, talk like him, think like him, but they're actually genetically not him, So he intermingles with these residents when they have an extreme weather event. Unless they get a ton of snow, they're going to fly out to fields that are always going to have readily grain available because it's not plowed under. So they can scavenger through that. And when he needs to go back to his safe haven, he's always going to have water to roost on every single night that will never freeze. When you add all of those combinations together, to me, it's an obvious scenario. I've been a little disappointed with our conservation groups of not telling that story. Right. Like there's a lot of, and there's more factors to that, but a lot of this that we created in a sense, and the Canada goose migration has completely altered and changed forever. And to not see more stories about that or documentaries, to me, is a little baffling. and it's not really a good service to other hunters. I think that story needs to be told and more enlightened.
I've not ever heard it put that way about the no-till farming, because the area that we're at in Texas, they still work the ground. So peanuts is mainly what we hunt here, and some winter wheat and milo and a little bit of corn, but they rotate their crops. So everything's on a circle pivot, and they'll do half the pivot in peanuts, half the pivot in whatever else. So they always disc it under, and then next year they flip, basically. So we're in an area where there's a little bit of no-till, but not much. But that makes I've never heard that argument put that way, and that makes a ton of sense. There's always food available, and there's always water available. So unless you get this big weather event, which we've not had in a very, very long time, you get this blizzard.
That's it.
Yeah, they're not going to go anywhere. I was watching Grumpy Old Men not long ago, and that's set around Thanksgiving in Minnesota, and they got snow up to their buttholes. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore.
That was normal.
It does, and that is a big part of it as well. And we've noticed this is years ago. We had a big. I mean, Chicago got hit with a big snowstorm, specifically southern Michigan, and then we actually got a little bit of a push of some migratory geese, and we shot a net caller. And I called a buddy of mine that bands with the DNR in Michigan, and I was like, "Hey man, what's this number?" And he was like, whoa, what number? He said, no, man. He said that goose was a transplant bird that it was a resident that they transplanted to Detroit City Park that was forced to leave from a survival standpoint now, because all the migratory they got like 14 inches of snow.
Right.
So what happened? And then after having that conversation with him, and his exact comment, he said, Kelley, define a migratory Canada goose today.
Yeah.
He said, it's cloudy. And he was saying this back in the 90s. But his point was, he said, just watch. This spring, your local resident population is going to increase because you've got a lot of transplant birds that come from Michigan that were forced for survival. They ended up with other true migratory geese, and they just took off and flew further south because, man, their local pond they were on froze solid, and they didn't have a cooling lake to sleep on, and they couldn't get feed because the snow depth was way too much. And they ended up in Tennessee, and we still have them here today, or their offspring.
I grew up in Wichita Falls, and we had no local geese then. They're probably 5,000 now.
Lazy genetics is what it is. But I mean, from a survival standpoint, it makes sense.
They're 40 miles from us now. I saw some. I saw some on the other side of Seymour now. I mean, right at Seymour, so they're getting closer.
Yeah, and think about this. So the weak die off, and the strong survive.
Right.
So if you have a major weather event that comes through, and you have that big of a population of resident Canada geese that are genetically, they won't migrate, then you have a true migratory goose that comes in. Well, then, even your migratory geese are staying with those residents because, man, the residents aren't leaving. Why am I going to leave?
Right.
Well, then the weak migratory goose, they die off. Well, the strong survive. And then it evolves from year to year where they become a stronger species, and they don't have to migrate anymore. There's a tougher goose today than what it was 20 years ago.
It's scary.
I mean, it's what we've done, and we've
created it.
Influence and kind of bred that into them,
and we've created it. Is the worst part. So where do you see all this going? I mean, crystal ball. What ends up happening 10 years from now?
I've said this before too, and I am not for government regulation.
Right.
I'm up for private enterprise business. So, but hypothetically speaking, imagine if, and again, I am not for this, but imagine if cooling lakes had to discharge water the temperature that it was intaked.
Right.
And not discharge it at 55, 60 degrees. What if it was at 32 or 33 degrees?
Right.
Or even that where they didn't, have the warm water discharges. If that didn't exist, if at the end of the day, they can have all the food they want. If they don't have water to roost on at night, they're gone.
Yeah.
And Mother Nature kicks in to where you have extreme weather events to where you'll get ice and you'll have lakes that freeze over. You'll still have river systems that'll still have a little bit of open water, but a good bit of your areas and those big cooling lakes, they're going to lock up tight. And once they start freezing, they're not going to thaw until February. So you will have a lot more of your natural migrations. I mean, it'll help it. But then again, I'm not for government coming in and telling a private enterprise, you can't. I mean, I'm not for that. But I will say, if the concept of taking water in really cold that normally would freeze and discharging it at warm water discharge and never freezing, that is against what Mother Nature and God intended.
Right. we used to have in our little slice of heaven out here in West Texas, we got, we made our name off of the Lesser Canada goose, and now it is the speckled-belly goose. I mean, that is a population that has just exploded and expanded within the last decade.
Yep, and that's and goodness, I have a love-hate relationship with those things.
I hate them.
But me and you both then. No, that's another story. But yes, and same thing here. Historically, they're wintering, on the Louisiana Marsh and the southern end of the flyway. And man, it's going back all the way up into central Illinois.
Yeah,
they're wintering, and it's creating an explosion of people hunting them. And they've always been here. It's just their migration stops are a little further north than what they used to be.
Yeah,
a lot further north, I should say.
Just on Facebook and stuff. I mean, I see guys in Ohio and Michigan, and they're shooting speckled bellies now. I used to never ever even see anybody up there shooting specs, but they're buying spec decoys now.
Yeah. More power to them. I'm not. They're a love-hate relationship.
they're tough. I'm telling you, there's days that they are the easiest thing in the world, and then there are days that you're just like, what happened? What world am I living in that I can't call this goose egg?
I'll tell you a funny story. And I with our call company I work with, Power Calls, and Brooke Richard is outstanding spec caller, and they pick on me. I used to be the kid. Now I'm the old guy of the group, which I don't know how to take that, but that's fine. But they pick on me because I have such a love-hate relationship for them. But it's kind of where a lot of this started is, I remember one time me and Grounds were in Alberta, and this is when Final Approach was doing some video series stuff. And actually, I think we were filming an episode for Waterfowl TV. Ron Lashcall was there, me and Ron and Tim. I'm trying to think who the other ones. It was mainly us three. Kevin Gross was there. He played baseball with the Dodgers. And anyway, but we're there hunting Canada geese first and foremost. But when opportunity arises in specs, that we're going to try to obviously call them in and everything, we struggled. Here we are supposed to be some of the best goose hunters,
right,
that people at least consider of us. And, Canada geese, oh yeah, we do our thing. But specs, oh man, and then I learned, years later, I was with the Haydels down in Louisiana. And he said, oh man, you're overthinking this. You got to be intentional. You can't hunt Canadas and specs all combo. If you're going to spec hunt, just go spec hunting.
Right.
You don't need all them decoys. He said, give me 3 decoys. I was like, come on, Rod, you can't, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. Put them 3 decoys about 50 yards out in front of you. Let's get on a field edge or something. He said, just don't overthink it. Just keep it simple. And every flock that got anywhere close, they called in.
Right.
It was the easiest thing in the world. And then it realized all these years, we were just overthinking. We were trying to power hunt them like we were in Southern Illinois hunting migrating Canada geese.
I guess you just shed a light on something, because that's kind of, I don't know. I've got the mentality of, if 50 dozen's not working, let's throw out 100 dozen.
Yeah.
Which I guess I should go, hey, let's throw out 10. But the problem is we have clients out here, and I don't want to ever be considered. I don't want anyone to ever think that I cut a corner. Does that make sense? You go on a guided hunt, and the guy throws out 5 or 10 dozen decoys. If it doesn't work, he's going to be like, well, he's just a lazy jackass that didn't want to do anything.
You don't want to pull a Matt Sullivan.
Yeah, Matt
and Brian both worked for me in the 90s.
Oh,
luckily
goodness.
They had left.
You've got some stories, I'm sure.
Yes. Luckily at the time they had left and done their own thing, and so he was not working for me then. But Matt put out 6 decoys one morning.
Yeah.
Then went to the truck to get his calls and fell asleep and took a nap and never went back to the spread.
And then wondered where his guys went.
And why didn't he get a tip?
And why he didn't get a tip.
Why did he get a tip? That does not surprise me. That's hilarious.
Yeah, we've had Matt on a couple times, and I'm telling you what, how that man is. I don't know how he didn't get more black eyes and broken noses. He's got some stories, man.
He has got, both of them have good stories. That is, it's interesting, man. There was actually a story that I think it was Brian, and I don't know. You know how stories get. The older they get, the more the bigger the legend grows. And I thought it was either Brian Sullivan, Grady Stevens, or Adam Romero, one of those 3. But they were at Real Foot in a calling contest, and they're middle of their routine, and looked over his shoulder. And there's actually some geese flying by, and he just forgot about the light. You only call 90 seconds. When the light comes on, you got 10 seconds to wrap up or you're disqualified. Well, he just completely ignored it. And he called, and I mean, he lit them geese right out there in front of us on the water. And of course, the buzzer went off, and he got DQ'd, and he just threw his hands up in the air, and and that story may be nowhere near true today, but I'm going to believe it is because that sounds just like any one of those three.
100% going to go
legend.
with it. Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% true. It's got to be. It's got to be. So you are in the Outdoor Hall of Fame. I mean, number one, like that's an incredible honor in itself.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's it. How many?
Michael Waddell and Michael Waddell got inducted the same time, and he comes to me and says, "Man, are we old enough for this?" And I was like, "Well, I guess we are now." It's like, what do you say? And at the end of the day, we all, me and him both, I can speak for him too. Like I don't know if we're worthy of this, but you're honored.
Yeah.
And so, and not only that. When you win a contest or when you're in the public eye, even around non-hunters, you want to portray hunting in a positive light. So when you're kind of given that title or honored by that, you want to give back and make it better than what it was when you come into it. And I know I can speak for him and all the other ones that, we're humbled and honored, and me, myself, and may not necessarily feel worthy just because you're trying to be humble about it. But at the end of the day, like, goodness, that's great. And I will say this, and I kind of mentioned that you have to do a little acceptance speech and looking back on things. And I've actually had some good conversations with some dear friends of mine. One's Sean Stahl and Ron Quist, and goodness, we can go down the list. But how blessed we are to be able to have hunted and to have kind of rubbed shoulders with some of the best waterfowlers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I had this conversation with Stahl. It's been years at NWTF years ago. That, especially when Tim passed away, I never really thought about it that much, beforehand. But when he passed, it really shed a light that, gosh, Kelley, like I rubbed shoulders with Tim. Like we traveled together. We went to, he loved hunting them hilltops. We'll pull into a field, and it didn't matter where those geese are set the day before. We're gonna go set up on that hilltop. And little things like that, you don't realize how much you're learning. Yeah. And how blessed you are to be able to duck hunt and goose hunt with people like that until they're gone. And then, and I think one of the last mallards that Eli Haydale shot was on my blind on the river here in Kentucky. I'll never forget, it was snowing and Kelley Haydale was with us and getting him in the boat. And listen, I have looked up to the Haydales for my whole life because that little DR-85 call that they come out with in 1985 is so far ahead of the curve from a technology. It is a musical instrument, and Eli being proficient in saxophone and all that, it's true to why he designed that. But I'll never forget getting him in the blind, and we were a little late getting in the blind. I mean, it was snowing sideways, and I looked up through the shooting stalls, and there's just mallards just coming in and landing. And I said, Mr. Eli, hey, let's come up here and shoot you one of these ducks, And I handed him 2 shells, and he just put 1 shell in the magazine, closed it. And I watched him. Nobody else even got their guns out of the gun cases. And he shouldered that gun. And as he was shouldering that gun, I said, just whenever you're ready, Mr. Eli, go up there and shoot one of them. And they were coming and landing. He goes, man, oh, man, look at them mallards. And I watched him crush a greenhead, and I was done.
Yeah.
Like, it almost like, as a moment on net, like, and I even told Kelley, it's like, how blessed are we? And even you guys with this podcast, let's be honest, how blessed are we to be able to have phone numbers, have rubbed shoulders, have collaborated with product with some of the best hunters in the industry. And me personally, whether it's Sean Stahl, the Haydales, goodness, Grounds, we can go on and on and on and on. And there's people I'll leave out, but like I'm honored. And I've had this discussion with Stahl, I've had this discussion with Ron Quist, and I was fortunate to do it from the duck side and the goose side. And I can tell you, like, there are techniques that I've used duck hunting that I picked up on from John Stevens at hunting his reservoir in Stuttgart, or hunting with the Haydales at their marsh in Louisiana, or hunting with Sean Stahl or Grady Stevens in Canada, or Grounds. And we can go on and on. There's countless people I'm leaving out, and I'm not even doing service, but that is a deal to where I am so honored and blessed to have learned from them. So yeah, I mean, being inducted into that Hall of Fame is is an award that may have my name on it, but there's a lot of other names that are in fine print below it.
It's crazy how small the waterfowl community is. Jeff had always kind of said that, and then like we started this podcast, and like it really is so
it's small.
Yeah. And I know, you know, because you know I grew up in this, and you know, like you said, you don't realize what you're learning when you're learning it. But like I've had the opportunity to hunt with some of the best out here, and Jeff was always just like, you know, it's a small community, and I'm like, whatever. It's big, it's huge. Like there's so many players in it, but it's not. Like there's like it's you weave your path in here, and you know one person leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and then you get there and you're like, this is a very small field.
Yeah. And I've always said from a hunting standpoint, you know, one of the biggest things that's helped me is being able to travel and learn and pick up techniques and ideas just from concepts of people in their local area doing what they do, you know, and you learn things like that. And then you can incorporate that in your area where you hunt. And me, it's no different. You know, I mean, goodness, I've hunted out there in you guys' neck of the woods and hunting those lessers and, you know, putting decoy spreads out and leaving a donut hole in the middle. I'm like, wait a minute, guys. Now, what, you know, like, well, when in Rome, do what, you know, you do what they do. And every goose comes in, lands right in that, you know, flock. And it's interesting. We filmed out there a few years ago. Kyle was with us. And I think it was Kyle's first time hunting out there, and they were scouting. And I'm like, you know, hunting those lessers, like, you got to have a bunch to really film because they're all the roost is coming. They're all coming at once. You know, and so I asked Kyle, I was like, well, how many groups do you think, you know, there's there's like 5,000 a group. Well, back in my mind, I was like, well, that might be 2 volleys. Like it's hard to put a 30-minute episode together on 2 volleys. It'll be the most epic volley, you know, but it's hard to do.
A lot of slow motion.
It is, yes, you know, but it was interesting. It's just different area of the country. You pick up little different tips and techniques. And like I say, man, it's a small industry, but when you've been fortunate to have traveled and to have duck hunted and goose hunted with the world's best, and it goes back for decades, like, man, I'm just so fortunate. And now, I mean, like I mentioned before we even started in this podcast, guys, I don't have a social media presence. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't do that. I've got an Instagram. I think I made 10 posts on it, you know,
that's where I tried to get a hold of you first, and then I was like, Kyle Jones, I need a number.
Oh yeah. Kyle hit me up at NWTF, and I was like, yeah, just give him my cell number, you know, because I long time ago, even when Facebook got started, I was like, man, I don't want to live a private life. Right. Like I've got a very tight knit group of friends that that I talk to regularly, and that's it. And I'm kind of a little bit of an introvert, you know, and sometimes I may be a little, it's not my intentions, but some people maybe standoffish or quiet or not as outgoing that I should be. I can tell you if I was way more outgoing at some shows and all that, it would be way more profitable probably in some sense, you know, but I'm not in it for that. Like I'm hunting every day because I enjoy hunting. If I kill a big deer or a big turkey, like I'm not in it to do photographs and post it on social media. That's not my thing. Like I'm the opposite. Like I don't want anybody to know. Like, I mean, we do the thing, you know, we always joke around, like we want to do shirts that say, don't ask. Cause during duck season, every day you go, you're in the grocery and it's just like, how many ducks you killed? And you go the next aisle. Yeah. So have a good day today. And you go the next aisle, you know, it's just like, and it's great. Cause these are some close, you know, people around all the time, but it does, you know, sometimes it gets excessive and you get burned out. And I can see where even baseball players or celebrity, you know, they get tired, you know, I could just see where they kind of, once they go through that grind, they really back up and want to just have a private life, you know, and I'm nowhere near to that, obviously that level, but I was fortunate to work, like I say, travel and this and that to where, man, I never really wanted to do the social media scene. And sometimes it irks my friends. We might have a great day duck hunt, like, oh, let's get a photo. And I'm like, man, throw them ducks in a boat. Let's go. I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat breakfast. And you know, I will say some of that has changed a little bit. You know, I mentioned the passing of Tim and different things that I do miss opportunities I wish I photographed, funny stories or things that I didn't. And that is one good thing I will say about social media. It timestamps that and it documents that to where it's easily findable years down the road, not just for us and for our enjoyment, for our kids and our grandkids. And a lot of that I don't necessarily have as much of that.
Yeah. It's such a fine line because I'm, you know, for social media, it's a very, very great tool, but if you're not careful, it can get out of hand on you. And I mean, I don't know. I've got a love-hate relationship with it. Like, because, to grow the podcast, we've got to have a social media presence. But like, I'll tell you what, the worst days of the week for me are the days that I have to spend doing social media. I hate it. I mean, it is just a drag. And then, it's a toxic place. It can be if you follow the wrong people.
With our store at Final Flight, like my nephew Cameron, he does all of that. And I don't mind somebody like with business side, they can post all they want. Like, I have no problem with that. I'm like you. I can't manage it. Like, I get stressed out. And not only that, because there's a huge part of me, and maybe this is the root of it. I want to portray hunting and what I enjoy doing in a positive light.
Right.
And if I post something that might stir some feathers and all that, and let's be honest, you're always going to make somebody upset. There's going to be that guy that's going to be judgmental, or that guy, and it breaks my heart so I just don't do it. I'm like, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be judged and be, right. You do something like that. And then it's just like, I did a Instagram, created that account. I was with Under Armour for like 10 years, and they know these guys dearly, and they knew how I was. And I just wasn't in it for that. And they're like, well, you ought to create one. So I did it at one show. And then after that, actually, I posted a picture of my son. I mean, we were in a boat, but like it might have been, I don't know, like 1.5 feet of water outside. Well, his life jacket was right beside him, and we just did it for the photograph. But like he didn't have. And then somebody made a comment, and I'm like, well, technically they're right. I shouldn't have done. But it broke my heart. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to have to go through all these things. And like, if you're riding an ATV, well, you got to have a helmet. You got to have. Well, technically, yeah, you should have that. But like,
we don't out here in the country. That's not how we roll.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm here I'm in a flooded field that I can stand up. It's like literally 18 inches deep.
Yeah.
And we all can stand up. But that's another deal but the dangerous part of social media for me, and I've said this to a lot of guys and friends, like, would you still hunt if you didn't have social media to post a photo on after the hunt?
Yes, I would.
And that question wasn't necessarily for you, but that is for all the listeners.
Yes.
Because there are people out there that they can't wait to post that photo of that hero shot after the hunt.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, I think we need to do a little bit of soul searching and realize why we're hunting. If Facebook was down for the day and so was Instagram and TikTok or whatever now, would you still get up and go hunting? And a lot of people, sadly, probably wouldn't.
They'd lie. They would lie and say that they would, but we all know better. Like, I mean, it's you're exactly right. Like, if social media was down for the season, would you even bother? How many days would you go hunting?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, would you really go out there? I mean, hey, it's snowing out there and the bed's warm, and your missus, it's Christmas time and she wants to spend time with you. And would you really go out there if it wasn't going to be that hero shot at the end of it? And I think, sadly enough, I think the answer for a lot of these guys, if they were truly honest, it would be no. It would be no.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And it's a sad state, but I will encourage them to just think about that question a little bit. And then when you do post, and it's okay to post hero shots. People want to see that. Post it in a positive light, because there are people watching that are non-hunters that don't get what we do.
Yes.
They don't understand it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're defiant and there's pushback, but we're all in this together, and I don't care how you kill your turkeys. As long as it's legal, you go do what you do. Same thing with ducks and geese. Like, listen, I'm not an ethic police here. They just go do what you do. As long as it's legal and it's portraying our industry and our sport in a positive light, that's fine. I don't think we beat each other up so much. That's a wrong. That's another thing that goes on a lot that I disagree with. But as long as it's in a legal means, and you're portraying the sport in a positive light, because there are people that don't get hunting. Right. And that is truth. They don't get firearms. And you have to kind of walk a mile in their shoes and realize when they were 8, 9, 10 years old and how they grew up in an environment that probably wasn't like how we grew up. So when you try to get in their shoes, you're like, you know what? I can see where they're coming from, but you know what? We could educate each other here. Yeah. So anytime you post a photo or a kill shot or whatever, just be thinking that, because we're all in this together, and we want to keep doing this as well as we want our kids to keep doing it.
I draw the line at reaping, though. I can't get behind reaping. Can't get behind reaping. But so I guess what my biggest problem with reaping is because it looks like some of the shots are pretty barbaric. I mean, you got turkeys' heads exploding, and like that's not good for hunting. If it weren't for that, I mean, I don't know. It kind of seems a little bit like cheating to me. But I mean, and you've got to have the right bird. I understand, and I'm not going to do it here because of snakes and stickers, and it's not happening for me. And maybe it's a little bit of envy. I don't know, but I don't know. It gets a little when I see videos of that happening. It feels a little bit like an Elmer Fudd type moment to me.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Hey, let me tell you a funny story on that. Me and Jim Ronquist were turkey hunting. This is late 90s, early 2000s. He was actually here with me in Tennessee on tough turkeys. Anyway, that's another story. But I'll never forget Jimbo telling me this story. A friend of his in Missouri, his wife was a painter and an artist, and she painted up an umbrella, a black umbrella, of the front side of a strutting turkey. And he says, man, I'm telling you, you could just walk out there and kill one of them things. And Jimbo was telling me this story. And I'm like, man, Jimbo, I've heard some crazy stuff, man, but you can go do that, but I wouldn't tell anybody you did that. So, I mean, that's been 25 years ago, so it's interesting to kind of see where, the roots of where that stuff came from and evolved from.
I've always, there were times that bird would hang up and I'll be like, damn it, if there was just a way that I could crawl out there. I had the idea. I just, the snakes and the stickers have always prevented me from crawling across the ground here in Texas, but I don't know. But listen, it's been an hour and a half, and I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. This has been a pleasure talking to you. I really, really enjoy it, and hopefully our paths will cross one day, and we can sit and chop it up at a hunting show or something like that. But this has been a lot of fun. Hour and a half flew right by. So we appreciate your time.
I said before we got started, I don't know you guys personally that well, but you guys like duck hunting and turkey hunting and college football. We're good. So we're boys. That's what some friends of mine from college say. He said, I figured you out, KP. He said, if I know your turkey hunting spots, he said, I know we're boys. I was like, well, so you guys like college football and all that. We're boys. So I'll come back anytime.
We appreciate you being on here. Thank you, and God bless you, sir, and have a great, safe spring turkey season.
Yes, sir.
Y'all too. God bless. Take care.
Kelley Powers, Outdoor Hall of Fame.
Very honorable man.
He is. He's done a lot for the industry, and he tells it like it is. So
this comes out on Friday.
It does.
We will be in Knoxville. Come by and see us at the Bass Classic. We will be in the convention center there. Check us out. Come by and say hi. I'd love to meet you and shake your hand, talk to you in person. Thank you. God bless y'all, and have a safe weekend.
Bye-bye. Go check out our wonderful sponsors. If I can find the list. Go check out Gundog, Shin Gear, Lucky Duck, Looking Glass Podcast, Hunt Proof App, Alpha Outdoor Specialties, Bangtail Whiskey, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Dirty Duck Coffee, Ducks Unlimited, Double T British Kennels, Pacific Calls, Dive Bomb Industries, Boss Shot Shells, and Mossberg.